I'm going to kick off this episode by shouting out to Spellbook. If you're in any of the Facebook or Discord groups, you've probably seen Alex's articles. They are getting better and better. He is getting more and more community support to make it the best resource possible. And the articles on Tupor Spellbook's theory, mixed with me sharing play experience, I think will help you do well at these tower events. Check them out and let them know I sent you. The best casters will tell you that Metazoo is a mental game. Fortitude is key. Keeping yourself in an optimal headspace can be the difference between victory and defeat. The more rounds go by, the more this becomes evident. And the masters are the ones who can handle the stress and the strain and the fatigue, even at the final table. Welcome to Towers, a Metazoo podcast. This is the final episode for Season 1, and we're going to be talking about a critical component for when you make it to top 32, and that is mentality. So if you've been following this show since the beginning, you know that I started as a casual player who was interested in competitive back at Water Tower. I made it to top 32, going undefeated day 1 and ranking 17th for the overall tournament for Earth Tower, and I got 5th place in Flame Tower. I've now played more matches than I can count. I know which ones were smooth for me and which ones caused strain, and I know where I was excelling and where I was messing up during these 3 tournaments. This is something I wasn't thinking about until I got there, and now that I've had more experience and I'm trying to prepare myself for what it might be like at a finals table, I thought this had to be the best topic to cap this all at. I want you to be more prepared than I was in the same situation, because you never know. That could be you facing off to be the next tower caster. I want to dig into my experiences a little bit more so you can kind of get an idea of where I was at. So leading up to a tournament, I will have nerves. I'll be antsy, I'll be kind of uncomfortable, and for me, that comes down to the unknown. I know what I'm playing. I don't know what my opponents are playing. I have confidence in my spellbook and in my testing, but I don't know how that's going to play against others. This can make it difficult to sleep. It might even make it difficult to eat. When your body goes into fight or flight mode, a lot of those systems just shut down. But you're going to need to eat going in. So there's 2 components that have helped me here. One is get that meal in. Wake up early enough so that you can eat a strong meal. Eat something safe for you that's going to fuel you throughout the tournament. Ideally, socialize while doing it. Granted, everybody's different, but I just like getting into the groove. Metazoo's a communal activity, and, getting those words going early helps out. But then when you get to the tournament, the thing that's worked for me is just trying not to sweat it too much until you've had your first game. I was as prepared for Flame Tower as I've been for anything, and even then, the tournament was just a big question mark to me until I sat down for that first game. At Water Tower, the first caster I played against was running Chessie and Invisibility, and he really gave me a run for my money. I knew that I could not let that spellbook have a break or he could overrun me. I won 1, he won 1, and then I won the final one, taking the match, which felt good, but it definitely showed me, all right, this is not going to be easy. I won that match, and during the process of playing that match, I was able to get in the groove, get comfortable, and set myself up for the rest of the tournament. At Earth Tower, it was much the same, albeit I had a lot more experience. I really didn't know how my spellbook was going to perform. Flame Tower was interesting because I went with a team, which helped. I had people to talk to. The time zone was friendlier to me, but my feelings didn't change until I started playing my first match, and I lost that match. And here's a little secret with the first round that I have noticed from top casters, is they're not too particular about winning or losing the first match. If you win, you're going to go play against other people who won. If you lose, you're going to go play against other people who lost. And there's worse places to lose than the first match of the day. As soon as I had that down, I was in the groove. I was excited to play my games. And what I've noticed for a lot of people is the nerves will dissipate and then they will come back towards the end of the day, especially if you have a high stakes match. So those are your first steps. Make sure you eat and don't sweat the first match too much. Take it seriously. You need to get every win you possibly can, but it is not going to make or break your day if you win or if you lose that one. Next, let's talk about high stakes matches. So if you're trying to make it to day 2, chances are you're going to have matches that are going to determine whether or not you make it. And that's when more of those nerves can come out and they can get you. You've played more games. You might be tired at this point. You might be hungry. Or you could be in the groove. You could be in your prime. And that's the energy I would try to take with you. The more you play, the more prepared you are. But that's not going to work for everyone. Say you're sitting down, it is round 6, and you know if you lose this one, you're out. This is where it is key to focus and to calm yourself. It's nobody else's match, just you and your opponent. You do not have control over the pages you pull, just the pages you put in your spellbook. Each hand is going to give you an opportunity to out-finesse and gain an advantage over your opponent. And even if your opponent is getting lucky or playing well, one of those elements can come and they can get them. You don't know how it's going to go until the thing is over. And let's look at the bright side. If you lose, then there's no stakes on the rest of your matches. You get to just enjoy yourself. If you win, you have more to do. Do not give up here. You want to win, but focus more on making correct plays and making your opponent work for every step. If they're moving fast and you find yourself getting caught up in that and also moving quickly, slow down. It's your turn. It's not their turn. They can't force you to move. You get to make your decisions. You get to place your pages, your die. Make sure your notes are on point. If you're shaking, that's also okay. Don't put your hands in your lap. You want to keep that hand out and open, but nobody is going to judge you. Everybody's been there. You could be stammering and trembling and win, and nobody can say anything to you. If you're somebody who can go on tilt, so to say, who can get upset and then play worse and worse, that's where having some kind of community around you can really help. Whether it's teammates or friends or even opponents you faced before. A lot of times when you beat someone, they're going to be rooting for you to beat everyone else because they want that loss to be meaningful. And when you lose to someone, you want them to beat everyone else. There's a lot of camaraderie that can happen in these matches, especially if you're newer to the game. So get out of your head, get focused. Beyond everything else, make correct plays. You have the experience, you have the practice, you just need to maintain that focus. If you listen to Sean, the Water Tower caster, talk about his experience, he had losses going in. He had to win all of his games in order to make it to day 2. And he ended up taking the whole thing. So it is not over until it's over. If you have a chance to make it to day 2, you have to play out those matches. And I would encourage you to play out all of your matches anyways. It's more experience. You traveled for this, have fun with it. And now let's talk about exhaustion and endurance. So 8 rounds is a lot, especially if you're tired from traveling or if you're like me and you're very bad at sleeping and you're in a time zone that's very hostile to you. Learning to play while exhausted is crucial. You're definitely going to want to keep the calories coming in. This is where any tournament prep guide will tell you to pack snacks. Eat those snacks throughout. I like having some peanut M&Ms, some Cliff Bars, some dried mango, just easy things to eat even if I'm not hungry, that I can just get down the gullet and that will help fuel me whether or not I feel like it's going to fuel me. But even at the end of the day, chances are you're going to be tired. But here's the thing. Your opponent's also probably going to be tired. You are both working with the same amount of time and the same amount of effort put in. So just because you're worn down doesn't mean you are at a disadvantage. Chances are your opponents are as well. And beyond anything, learning to play while exhausted is crucial. After Earth Tower, I started helping Southern California organize so that we could have medal events, and I would go to these medal events. And I noticed even at our local medal events, people would get really tired going throughout, and they would start kind of throwing in the towel early. And my experience at Towers, where I was never going to do that because I traveled and I just really wanted to experience as many of these high-level matches as possible, helped a lot during those medal tournaments. I'm not likely to make a mistake in my final game that I wouldn't have had made my first game. I do a lot of long distance backpacking, especially up in the Sierras in California, which are anywhere from 9,000 to 12,000 feet. And I'm really bad with elevation. Elevation sickness is real. I have trouble breathing. I get really tired. I get headaches. but I've spent so much time over so many years up in that region that I know what my body can do. I know when I'm actually in danger and when I'm safe. I just need to make sure I eat and drink. And if you don't have that skill for tournaments, the next tower or caster cup, you're going to get it. If you gas out and you end up throwing a match as a result, that is a crucial step in your career as a competitive caster. You have to get that experience somewhere. Don't let it go to waste. At this point, after 3 big tournaments and then a number of medal events, I'm pretty comfortable with how I'm going to feel later in the day and how to tap into that quiet spot of my brain so that I can keep making correct decisions. There are things you can do leading up to that, but you know your mind, you know your body, figure out what works for you. Now, ideally, you put those things together, you've listened to this podcast, and like me, you might have made it to top 32. You made it to day 2. And then you go, now what? Because at Earth Tower, I had plans for hanging out with friends on Sunday. I have a lot of people I don't get to see very often in New York. It's a cool city. I was looking forward to watching matches. To me, it was going to be leisure. And now I'm going to be playing tomorrow, and it's more stressful than ever. I maybe got 2 hours of sleep between day 1 and day 2. But that was okay. And here's why. And this is what I want you to take with you to day 2 if you haven't made it before. You are not playing as many matches as you did day 1. And you are way more prepared for your matches in day 2 than you were in day 1 because you just played up to 8 of them. You know what other people are playing. And it's not like you're going to some champion table that is pulling people from a secret other tournament. Everyone you're going to play in day 2 are people that you were playing against in day 1 who did as well as you did. On top of that, it's single elimination. So you're going to have 1 match in top 32. If you win that one, now you're in top 16. If you win that one, now you're in top 8. If you win your 4th match, you are now in the semifinals. In day 1, you needed to play more than 4 matches just to guarantee your spot in day 2. And now, after 4 matches, you're one of the most decorated casters at that tower. I've only had 2 top 32 experiences now. At Earth Tower, Easton knocked me out match 1. But that was something I was keeping in mind when I sat down to play him. Is one, I really want to play all the great casters, and he's certainly one of them. And so I sat down to that match ready to enjoy myself, ready to make memories, and ready to make him work for it. And I got knocked out. No fanfare. After that, I just went over to the benches and I watched the rest of the matches. It was a great time. Win-win. Now, Flame Tower was a little bit different for me because I had been playing with the team and I didn't want to let them down. Beyond that, at that point, I wanted us to win. I didn't start this podcast really caring about winning, and I'm still not someone who's going to get upset if I lose. Competition is the important thing to me. I like competing, and when I do things, I want to do them to the best of my ability, and I want to get better at them. But now we got stakes involved that have enhanced the game for me and have made the matches more exciting. That and being on a team with other people with their own mentalities and things that they're taking into it helps me kind of like take the good from those and bring them with myself. But I was also way more confident going into day 2 at Flame Tower. Not that I wasn't at Earth. I had a better performance day 1 at Earth than I did at Flame, but we just hammered those spell books down. And really, I was shooting for a team win. I wanted to make sure that I was performing to the best of my ability, and I knew all of them were too. But there were 4 of us going into the finals, and none of us were playing each other the first round, which meant up to 4 of us could get to top 16, and we did. When I made it to top 8, I finally got paired up against one of my teammates to go into the semifinals. And that was one of the most fun, least stressful matches I've ever had. So I made him work for it, but we had played each other over 100 times during practice. It honestly felt like we were back in practice. Our MZOs at our table were laughing both with and at us while we were playing. So that's key. Day 2, you're not going to play as many matches. It is easier, at least for me, to give my all at every match because you know if you give your all and you make it, you're going to the next game. If you don't, you get to go take a nap. You get to go eat some food. And I'm going to do a little asterisk bonus point here. Your day 1 rankings do affect what your placing is going to be. For example, I was knocked out the first round of top 32, But because Michael and I were first and second place day one, that meant that he was 17th place, I was 18th place, because we weren't in the top 16, so we were the next spots after 16. Same thing with me in top 8. I didn't make it to the semifinals, but my record the first day was good, and so I got 5th place, which is the highest place you can get if you're not going to the semifinals. But something that I noticed at Earth Tower is like I was really stoked to be first place and second place throughout the day because top 32 did not exist to me. But I noticed and then retroactively kind of remembered that a lot of the casters who typically do top cut, that's what they show up to do, and they're going to make it quite often, don't really care what their placing is. It really doesn't matter to them. And going into Flame Tower, that was something I felt. The only thing that really mattered was top 32. It didn't matter if you were 32nd or if you were first day one. Though, shout out to Robbie, South Bay Casters, one of my homies who was first place day one. He's one of my favorite people I've met through this game, and that was super rad, especially at his second tower. He top 32'd Water Tower, came back with Flame, got first place that day. But my overall point is celebrate if you do good day one, but your placings do not matter as long as you're in top 32 going into day two. There were people who were at the back of the pack, so to say, in top 32 who made it to top 8. Now we get to the second to last section, which is just the nerves and the things you experience during day two when every match is a high stakes match. I will be honest. I think when it came to playing, I did very well day two. I'm very happy with my performance. However, when it came to keeping track of things, I give myself a B minus. I was like at a solid 80%. I was not as sharp when it came to keeping the entire game state in my head, keeping up on burn counters, all of that. We still made it happen, but I found more often than day one, my opponent and I were collaborating to make sure, hey, burn is now at 3, correct? Yes, cool. And this is where writing everything down came in handy. You also have usually more direct involvement from MZOs, and they will keep you honest during that process. And for me, especially when I got to top 8 and I was facing my teammate Philip, it was at that moment that I knew exactly how prepared I was and how prepared I wasn't. And the only thing I could do in that moment was take advantage in every which way that I was prepared. I knew that between Philip and me, Philip was the more prepared caster. He was more experienced working with our side deck. He was local to most of our team, so he had more in-person matches. And he has a long career with other card games, and so he was effortlessly keeping track of other things in a way where I had to really keep my brain on to do. But I'd played a lot of matches against Philip, and I knew what worked and what didn't work, and so I played effectively, but chaotically. I gambled. I knew if both of us had equal hands and were playing to the best of our abilities, he was going to beat me. But I knew if I could get that risky roll, if I could hit him with a confused beastie, that I could pull ahead. To me, if you're playing a teammate, you have to respect them and play to the best of your ability. But that game was the least stressful of all of the matches that I had that entire weekend. Now, that would have been different, right, if I wasn't playing someone on my team. But ultimately, I was rooting Legion of Doom, and Legion of Doom went ahead into the semifinals. But remembering when I was sitting there and I was watching how he was siding and how I was siding and how we were getting in each other's heads because we knew exactly what spellbook the other person was playing, and knowing how I could be better, and going after that match and watching the semifinals and then the finals, being like, what would it take for me to be confident at those tables and to know that there's nothing else I could have done to prepare? And I took notes and I set the bar a little higher. And whereas going into Earth Tower, I could not imagine top 32. Now when I'm thinking about these tournaments and I'm building my spellbook, I'm thinking about the finals table. If I can't see myself siding in a card that will help me at the finals table, it's not going to go into my spellbook. I have now watched every finals from every tower. I know what they look like. I'm familiar with most of the players who have played in them. I've talked to them about their spellbooks and about their plays. But it's one thing to kind of appreciate that intellectually, and it's another thing to actually get close to being there and having that be the next step. And while there's no guarantee I will do as well as I did at Earth or Flame, plenty of excellent players do not make it to top 32 at every tournament. I actually think it's fairly rare. That is the mentality I'm now bringing into the game. Instead of being nervous for match 5 or 6 on day 1, that might determine if I get to day 2, like, forget about that. I'm thinking of day 2. And not only day 2, I'm thinking of the finals. Because if I'm prepared for the finals to play the opponent who has made it as far as I have, and I know what I'm going to side, I know how to outplay them, I know how to use my spellbook to the best of my ability, then everything else is going to follow that. I will absolutely report back on how this goes over the next few big tournaments, on how that mentality has helped me if I've taken more notes. That's what this podcast is all about. But I want you to think about that while you're preparing, while you're testing, while you're putting your spellbook and especially your side together, because there's going to be a time where that really matters. And if you're not in a place where you can imagine that, where you are as familiar with those high-level spellbooks as you could be, then you have homework. You know what to do at your next tournament. Every tournament gives you an opportunity to become better at this. I have seen the difference between my 3 big tournaments and other people's dozens of tournaments and what that requires of me to keep up with them. Until you know what all the answers are, and then it comes down to variance and skill, you always have more to learn. And chances are your hardest matches of the day are not going to be the final matches. My match with Easton at Earth Tower at day 2 was excellent. I loved it. It was not my most challenging match at that tower. The answers were in the hand and at the table. I could see where it was going. I made the most with what I had. At Water Tower, my most challenging match really at any tower was against a caster from Arizona named Zach. We drew, and we drew because both of our spellbooks were so balanced against each other that every decision was agonizing. It was excellent, and that draw didn't up my place. It was not the most crucial match of the day, but it was one of the most crucial matches for me as a caster on the long term. At Flame Tower, I have 2 matches that really stick out to me. There's one of my later ones against a caster, Ryan. If you've been following Tupper Spellbook, which you should, you'll have seen his articles breaking down Flame spellbooks. He was an excellent player. He was the only person I made a play mistake that I could immediately identify against. You think he made a play mistake against me? He did not. He was so good. I really enjoyed our match. Like, those are the things that really get your brain moving that, like, I value now and is the appeal of competitive for me. The next was day 2 in top 16 against a caster from South Bay, Alex. We had met the day before. He said if we made it past our first match that we'd likely be playing each other. And I said, looking forward to it, because I'm always going to look forward to playing the next person. And I had a really good time playing with him. It was important to me that the vibes were good and that we could both play to the best of our abilities. And as we went on, we were more confident. We knew that we were playing a proper top 16 match. We knew our opponent deserved to be there, and we knew whoever won that could go and take the whole thing. I hope this has given you food for thought. It's still something I'm working on. I'm probably going to be revisiting that place when I was playing Philip, and I was like, what could I have done to be more prepared? Forever, until I have made it to the peak of whatever my ability is. Because that's the best I've ever done at a tournament, and it's wild to me that that highlighted where I was coming up short. I hope this helped you out. I hope you can stay focused and in good spirits at your next tournament. And that's it for Towers Season 1. 15 episodes. I'm pretty happy with that. We've had a pretty good arc. I'm going to publish this, and then I'm going to be focused on Dark Tower. I hope to see you all there. And then after that, Season 2, we're going to start taking some bird's eye view, figuring out how we can make this podcast not only very useful to everyone who listens to it, but also a good documentation of Towers as a whole, now that we've experienced a number of them. If you have any questions or topics I have not covered that you would like me to cover or expand on, leave a comment on YouTube or hit me up on Instagram. Either leave a comment on the picture for one of these posts or DM me. And if I get enough of those, I'll do like a Q&A episode. I'll do like an audience interaction episode so that we can cover those before moving on to Season 2. But beyond that, like, thank you for listening. Thanks for playing matches with me. Please say hi at whatever next tournament we run into each other at. and do well. Do the best you possibly can to your current level of preparedness and skill. Until next time. Towers, a Metazoo podcast, was created by me, Ester Ellis. The cover art was made by Chandler Candela. Music by the Heatley Bros. More details in the description. Want to say hello? Follow the show on Instagram at Towers Podcast. Send me an email at towersgamepodcast@gmail.com and say hi in Metazoo's Discord servers. Many of the figures in Metazoo originate in indigenous lore, and I think it's important for me to acknowledge that I make this podcast on the traditional lands and home of the Tongva Nation. This game presents us with a rich opportunity to get in touch with the living cultures that surround us, and I hope you can take a moment to reflect on the history of the land you stand on and the figures in the cards you play.